is joining us today. On behalf of CENTA, we are delighted to have you with us for another insightful session in our ongoing CENTA webinar series for teachers, a space where passionate educators come together to learn, reflect, and grow professionally. Your presence and participation continue to inspire us as we build a stronger, more empowered teaching community. Coming to today's topic, in the fast paced world of education, we often move from one lesson to the next without pausing to ask, how did that truly go? Reflection is more than just a backward glance. It is a rigorous professional tool for course correction, identifying best practices, and achieving long term career satisfaction. Today's session, titled Reflective Practice, a Path to Professional Growth and Fulfillment, invites us to move beyond simply thinking about work and toward a structured, insightful, reflective practice. This stimulating session will explore the evolution of reflective practice as a pillar of professional success, diving into established theoretical frameworks and bringing them to life through real world illustrations. By the end of this session, you will walk away being able to apply practical proven methods for self reflection, identify specific pivot points across diverse areas of your educational work, and develop a personalized roadmap toward greater professional fulfillment. And to guide us through this critical conversation, we have a facilitator who perfectly bridges global education leadership, technical rigor, and pedagogical innovation. It is my pleasure to introduce today's facilitator, Dr. Deepa Balasubramanian. A very warm welcome to CENTOX, Dr. Deepa. With over
Thank
28
you.
years of With over 28 years of experience spanning both the private and social sectors in the education field, Dr. Deepa is an accomplished education leader. She has directed curriculum design, content development, and teacher professional development in K 12 mathematics education across multiple geographies, including India, South Africa, Singapore, and the US, aligning them to progressive pedagogies and current education standards. Dr. Deepa has supervised and led large scale STEM and technology enabled education programs involving international collaborations with prestigious institutions like the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in US. She has frequently presented her work at national and international conferences as well as to senior education ministry cadres. Interestingly, in the early phase of her career, she started as a software engineer, designing applications that involved research, algorithm development, and computational thinking. Currently, she operates as an independent education consultant, focusing on the design of education programs and teacher training workshops, with research interests covering art integration in teaching learning and socio emotional learning. Dr. Deepa holds a PhD and a master's in mathematics from Northwestern University in US and a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Delhi University. She is also a trained classical musician and a firm believer that the practice of yoga will keep the mind and the body agile. Dr. Deepa, we are truly honored to have you with us today to help us master the art of structured reflection. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Upasana, for this wonderful introduction. And I would also like to welcome all the participants today for the webinar today. And thank you all for taking the time to log in. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with all of you over the next 1 hour. I will just quickly give you an overview of how the next 1 hour is structured, and then we will get right in. So we will be talking about how the concept of reflection actually evolved over time, and some frameworks that help us and guide our reflective practice itself. And then I will be looking at different areas within the education sector that actually lend themselves for reflection and actually warrant that we give it thought, time, and attention. The teaching in the classroom, I'm sure that all of you, whether you know it or not, you'll have, you'll have thought about it from time to time. But there are other areas as well that lend themselves for reflection. So we will cover some of those. And then we will also look at some practical steps that we can take in order to make our reflective practice easier and more streamlined. And throughout the webinar, at suitable points, I do have some interactivities which will encourage you to do a little bit of reflection yourself. And that will, bring in the engagement also. And I'm hoping for a nice, vibrant, and engaging webinar interacting with all of you. So let's get started. What is reflection? Why is it important, really? So in the education field, in the education sector, in the quest for constant improvement and aligning to, changing times, you will have found that theorists, practitioners, researchers, policymakers, all of them are constantly restructuring the space, be it in terms of curriculum or content or the teacher's role in the classroom or, the pedagogies that we use in the classroom. You've seen it being, evolving and changing through successive curriculum documents, policy documents. And when this is changing, it becomes imperative for educators and teachers to also go along with this change and be open for changes that need to be made in order to go with the tide. And of course, when some people are experienced, they are able to do it, more easily. But sometimes experience can also become an impediment. We get so bogged down by some ways in which we are doing certain things, and we are not comfortable enough to break away from that. So in all of this, the one practice that really does help us is that of reflection. Because what we do in the reflective practice is pointed and very focused thinking on certain tasks, incidents, or experiences with the view of relearning, reimagining, or restructuring, reformulating. So when the very premise is that to relearn, then the brain is already opening itself for changes that need to be made, or to defend, changes that you don't want to make. The reflective process involves analysis, which will give you that ammunition as well. So in a sense, this reflective practice is holding a mirror to our past actions, which is, of course, always beneficial for growth. And even if you look at the national professional standards for teachers, it calls out reflective practice as a standard that teachers need to, imbibe. And it is not only restricted to understanding and being able to practice it, but also reach a stage where we will be able to guide others, also help others in the process as well. Is reflection beneficial for all professions? Absolutely, yes. Take inventors or scientists, for example. They do their experiments, repeatedly. They have many iterations of their trials, whatever they're trying to do, or their experiments. And from each round of that, each iteration, they learn something, they analyze something, and move it forward and use it in the next iteration. All of you must have heard of, Madame Curie, who is the Nobel Prize winning scientist. And she was known to have, kept very detailed notes, not just on the experiments and the data that came, but also her thoughts and her doubts and her what ifs. So she used to always engage definitely in reflective practice, and as do all other scientists. What about sports people? If you look at, basketball matches or football, any team match, very often you will see that a coach is watching the match very carefully, and at suitable points during the match, when there is, kind of a timeout, the team huddles together and they're discussing something. What are they doing? They're discussing, they're reflecting. And definitely after the match is over, there is debriefing that happens with the coach, because the coach is actually watching the match very, very critically with the intent of debriefing later. So definitely reflection happens there. And musicians, I can tell you for sure that if there are 3 or 4 people who are part of a band and are creating music, each person will come up with ideas and they will try out those ideas. They'll think about it. They will see how it's going to relate to the audience and then take it forward in different ways. So, absolutely, yes, reflection benefits all professions across the board. So now what we will do is, before we dive further into the webinar and go into the evolution of the concept and the frameworks, we will be running a very short poll. These are 3 simple questions, and you can just pick the answer that you find most suitable. They are very simple, easy questions. It is not about the complexity, it is more about getting our minds into this topic at this stage itself before we move on. So, to just get all our minds thinking about reflection. So, can we have the first poll question, please? I request my center colleague to run the first question.
The audience, the poll question is already up for you to answer to. You can start answering. The question is, in your opinion, what should reflection focus on the most? We have had quite a number of votes, and people are still voting, so we'll wait for a couple of more seconds. So most people, ma'am, thinks that student or participant responses should be the main focus. What went wrong has gotten the second highest vote here.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is very nice to see. I just wanted to see how the opinion would tilt. Actually, all 4 of these options are very important, and all 4 of them are very close contenders in my view. Because what worked well is also important for us to reflect on. For what reason? One, of course, that we will feel good about it, and that helps us to work better in the future. But sharing of best practices is very important. So when we know that something has worked well, we should reflect on the why of it, because it helps us to derive from our own experience later. And of course, one's own feelings and beliefs, which was the last one. One of the frameworks that I will be talking about is giving specific importance to this. So I would say that all 4 were close contenders. That's the way I wanted it to be, and very happy to see how the opinions have moved. Can we have the second question, please?
The second question is up. I will request the audience to start answering their preferred option. The question is, which statement best reflects your understanding of reflective practice? We'll wait for a few more seconds for you to complete answering. Currently, a clear lead is it is personal and collaborative. The second highest is it is a group activity.
Great. So, yes, I would concur that it is personal and collaborative, because there is a part of reflection which is individual also. Many a time it does start as an individual activity because we are thinking about something, that is personal to us. We have, performed some tasks, but the group element is very important, and therefore it is both personal and collaborative. Can we have the third question now?
Dear audience, the third question is up and running right now. Okay, the third question we are running in. Yeah, we are running now. The question is, what do you believe is the outcome of reflection? Please take some moments to answer this. We have a clear winner. Nearly
Mhm.
70% people have said continuous improvement.
Absolutely. I would also choose that. I would say that deeper insight to experiences is a very close contender as well. Um, because we do, whether it is even professional, even in the personal world, personal experiences also, we get deeper insights when we reflect. Number one, immediate solutions, we don't always get it. Sometimes we do. And also, number four, sometimes we have to redefine objectives, not always. So, yes, I would also pick either two or three. So, that's fine. I'm very happy with the way it has tilted. So, moving on now. Let us talk about the concept and how it has evolved over time. So when you look at the literature in on reflective practice, one name that you will find quite often is that of John Dewey, and you can see the name on the left hand bottom corner of the slide. You will see his name coming up quite often, and way back in 1933 he looked at reflection as a very pointed and structured kind of thinking which is different from just routine thinking. So for him, reflection is attached to an issue that has to be resolved. So he felt that when we are in the professional space and we have certain issues that crop up, those are fertile grounds for actual learning, because when we reflect on that and find certain ways to mitigate or move forward, then that leads to growth. So in some way, for John Dewey, reflection was closely connected with problem solving. Now, moving on, what Donald Shawn did is that he gave time frames or a time continuum to reflective practice itself. He defined certain time frames in which reflection can happen, and he came up with the concept of reflection in action and reflection on action. So what are these? Reflection in action is reflection that we do in the present moment, in the now, while we are actually performing a certain task. So when we are doing something, if we have the presence of mind, we notice and certain things, and we decide to take certain actions on it, then it is reflection in action, which is happening in the present moment. And as opposed to that, reflection on action is reflection that happens after a particular task has been completed, after a particular incident, and when we are looking back at that incident and trying to recollect all the nuances or the details of it. So this is happening on something that has already transpired. Okay, so reflection in action and reflection on action. Now, what Killian and Tottenham, and you can see the names again in the left bottom, they extended this idea to also introduce reflection for action. And reflection for action is the forward-looking part of the reflection. It is actually the part of the reflection that creates an action plan for the future. And of course, it most often arises from something that we have been thinking about in the on action stage or in the in action stage, but it is deciding what we will do in the near future. So it is a forward looking part. So you can see the three stages very clearly. One is in the present, one is thinking about the past, and one is planning for the future. So these are the three time frames in which reflection can happen. So now let's look at an example that will place all of this in context. And this is the scenario here. The illustration here is that of a teacher who is conducting an oral question and answer session in the classrooms, revision session. So the teacher has finished maybe the syllabus or maybe a big chunk of content, and the teacher has decided that a set of questions is going to be addressed in the classroom in an oral manner, and the teacher is going student by student in a linear fashion and asking them the questions, and hoping that in the process there will be revision that happens. Now, the inaction, the teacher notices that there is distraction amongst the students, especially amongst students in the back benches, because he has maybe started, asking the students in the front row, so there is distraction. So there and then, the teacher decides that he's going to make two changes. One is he decides mentally he is going to pull students up for asking questions randomly. He's not going to go in a linear fashion. That is one very simple change. And then what else he does is that he takes 6 chits of paper. On 3 he writes ask, and on 3 he writes don't ask. And then he folds it up, puts it in a cup. And now he continues with the session. He picks a student at random and then gives them the cup also. If the child picks a chit which says ask, he will ask the question. Otherwise, if it says don't ask, he will skip that student and go to the next. Now, very simple change, and by bringing this chance element, what the teacher notices is that the attention of the students is back in the classroom. So they are quite interested in seeing what their friends, what chit their friends have picked up. And in that process, they're also listening to the answers. So this is reflection in action, where the teacher has noticed something during the session and has quickly made certain changes in whatever he wanted to do. Now, the same background scenario, reflection on action, the teacher completes the entire session and then reflects later about the session and thinks about all the details and realizes, oh my God, some of the students were actually very distracted. And then the teacher starts thinking about various other strategies that could have been used. And this will become reflection on action, because the task is over, the session is over, and the teacher is thinking about it later. And if the teacher now makes certain certain action plan for the future. Say the on action reflection, the teacher comes up with the thought that, she could have done a gamified approach. And she decides that over the weekend, she's going to work out all the details of the, game that she will use next time she's doing such a session. Then that is reflection for action, because there is an action plan for the future. Or the teacher decides that she will research on certain techniques for revision and then try and incorporate them. So here is an example where the teacher is making an action plan for the future. So you can see the 3 stages in which reflection can take place. And of course, this is a classroom scenario, but this applies in any situation that actually we would be encountering. We can actually be in any of these 3 stages. So now I want you all to do a short reflective activity for yourself. It will just take a minute or so. You don't have to share anything in the chat box. This is just for your own assessment for yourself. Look back at your professional journey and think about how much reflection have you been able to exercise in each of these categories through your journey. And to help you, quantify it, I've just given you 3 options. They're the same in each of the categories. It basically encapsulates high, average, and low. That is the amount of reflection you've been able to do. Just take a pen and paper and choose one of these options for yourself. I'll give you just a few seconds to do that. And you can continue with it later on after the webinar also, thinking about it. Okay, I hope you all have been able to assess for yourself how much reflection you have been able to do through your professional journey. But you can continue with this reflection later after the session is over as well. So now let's look at some frameworks. Framework is basically a structure that helps us to implement this, in this case, the reflective practice in a systematic manner. The first framework that I will be talking about is the Gibbs reflective cycle. It is a 6-stage cyclical process. And assuming that you have completed some task or some incident and you are thinking about it, the Gibbs reflective cycle starts with the description stage. So the first stage is description, where you're thinking about what happened, all the details of everything that actually happened. And within that, you also will move to feelings, which brings up what feelings and emotions came up during that incident. So all the behavior, the feelings, everything that came up, all the details, you will be thinking about that and recalling that, remembering all of it. And then comes the evaluation stage, where one is trying to put down what was good in that activity that took place and what was not so good, what was good and what was bad about that entire experience. And within all these three stages, one is only trying to recall all the details. We are not trying to bring in any judgment into it as of now. We're just trying to recall all the details. And then comes the analysis phase. Now, in the analysis phase, one tries to attribute the reasons behind why certain things happened the way they did. So we know what happened. Why did it happen that way? So what sense can we make out of the entire situation? And when we do that analysis, we come to the conclusion stage, where we think about what else could have been done, or what else can we do, to maybe change certain factors for the better, or take forward certain things that were already very good. So the conclusion stage then leads to an action plan for the future, where one decides what we are going to do for the future if certain situations came up which are very similar. So let's take an example again, because otherwise some of these things can be very abstract. So I'm taking an example of a teacher who is dealing with a student who has one difficult trait, and the teacher has been trying very hard to address that trait, has not been succeeding, and has been thinking about talking to the parents about it. So the parents teachers meeting happens, and the teacher actually discusses the issue with the parents. But the parents are not very forthcoming. Their reaction is not very positive. But anyway, the parents teachers meeting happens, it's over, and now the teacher later is thinking about it. So this is the context. Now in the description stage, the teacher will think about what happened, right? The parents came and she described the issue and the feelings that came up. She may have felt relieved that finally she was able to share it with the parents, but then she remembers that the parents were not very happy. So those were the emotions from the parents. Then she evaluates that what was good is that now somebody else who's also invested in the child has been brought into it. But what was not so good is that the reaction from the parents was not what she wanted. And the analysis she does is that maybe she could have done it better. The child, after all, has other good qualities. Maybe she should have brought up all of that first, put the parents at ease, and then brought this up slowly. She tries to analyze all of that and comes to the conclusion that yes, she could have done this a little better. And the action plan she makes for herself is that she will reach out to the parents again, and she'll take the permission of the school again, and then she will reach out to the parents again and explain to them that her whole objective was to share with them, not to just offload it. She was not trying to just outsource the issue in any way. She's very much invested along with them to try and resolve this. And the child has so many other good qualities also, which really are positive. So she decides that this is going to be her action plan. She's going to reach out to the parents again. So you can see that just a small interaction or incident with a parent in a parents teachers meeting can go through these 6 stages of the Gibbs reflective cycle itself. So moving on, the next framework I want to talk about allows for further deeper reflection. So this is called the onion model, and it is by Carthagon and Vassalos. And they believed that teachers are actually everybody is a human being first. And then we are whatever we are in the professional world or in the personal world. And therefore, teachers come with their belief system and their own identity, what they want to, how they see themselves, in the professional space, where they want to be 2 years from now, 5 years from now. The identity, the mission, all the value system that we carry is very important, and that should also be reflected upon, is what this model is addressing. So this model is going into the person who is actually doing the reflection, and it is envisaged and visualized in the form of in layers like an onion, and the outer three layers are actually very similar to what we have been discussing so far. So reflection does start with some incident that has happened in the environment, and all the details of that, the behavior of everybody, all the stakeholders, the behaviors, the emotions, all that came up, and what needs to be addressed. So that would bring us to the point where what competencies we have and what competencies do we still need to build. So all of this is addressing, pretty much has an overlap with what we have been talking so far. But then this model says that go into yourself as well and be in balance with your deeper belief system, be in balance with your deeper value system, and your actions should be balanced with that, so that your long-term mission for yourself, your long-term identity for yourself is always, in the direction, the correct direction. So again, to look at a quick example. This is an example of a teacher who is in a school where the school comes up with this policy that every week there will be assessments, maybe short quizzes or tests for the students, and each of them will be counted for the grade. And this teacher believes very deeply and strongly that if you have assessments that count for the grade, so frequently, the children are going to be stressed. They will be studying only for the test. There will not be that room for exploration, making mistakes, and she believes all of that very strongly should be there in the kind of space she wants to create for her students. So then she actually dialogues with the management and tries to bring some semblance of balance to this policy itself. So here is an example of a teacher who did not just blindly follow whatever was the mandate, but looked deeper into what she believes she wants to create as a growth space for her students, and try to move the needle in that direction. And very often what Kortegan and Vassilas also felt is that sometimes when we are addressing certain things that are happening in our professional world, maybe even in our personal world, we don't make progress, even if we are trying, solutions that are given. But at those times, maybe there is something deeper inside us that we want to resolve, and that will help us. So they believed that this part, the inner part, is also important. And this is the model that actually relates to that long-term fulfillment. Because when we do that, when we are always in alignment with our inner compass, it will give us a long-term fulfillment and satisfaction. So now what we will do is we will move and talk about different areas within the education space itself, that education sector, that lend themselves for reflection. So I will start with the school facilities and governance. If you think about it, a major portion of a child's waking hours is actually in the school, and the school is building very, very important space where their holistic growth is happening. So the facilities and governance is an area that requires attention and thought. And infrastructure would be the classrooms big enough for the number of students? Is there enough light? Is there enough fresh air in the classrooms? The science labs, the libraries, are they all well equipped? These are all areas that one needs to think about from time to time. And as far as the governance of the school itself is concerned, is it inclusive? Does it give voice, give the teachers the voice, or other staff members the voice? Is it an inclusive kind of administration, especially when they are making decisions that will actually affect the other staff members of the school itself? Are there sufficient is there sufficient staff, helpful staff? These are all areas where, of course, the management will be thinking about, but educators, teachers also, from time to time, when you see a variance, these are areas that one needs to give some thought to. And children learn in different ways, right? So is the school giving opportunities for excursions, field trips, inter-school competitions? These are all different areas. Now, coming to classroom environment and culture, here I am not talking about the teaching itself, not about the pedagogy. I'm talking about the atmosphere in the classroom. So happy, safe classrooms are very important. And neuroscience, which studies how the brain actually functions, brings out very clearly that there is an emotional connect. When there is an emotional connect, then the brain learns and is able to retain in memory much better. So we want that emotional connect to be one of happiness and safety. So are we able to, in different ways, bring that about for our children? The sense of belonging is something I want to speak about a bit, because research studies have shown that when children feel a sense of belonging with their peers, then their ability to strive harder, their perseverance, tenacity towards solving difficult problems is greater. And one such research study was by Master and Walton. And what they did was that they worked with a bunch of preschoolers, very young children. And one bunch of preschoolers were given a very challenging puzzle to solve with no other preamble. Each child was doing it separately, no connect with the others. The other bunch of preschoolers were given the same challenging puzzle to solve. And this group, each child was told, you are the number 3 child, you are the puzzles child. So each child was identifying himself or herself with the puzzle and as a puzzles child, but not with any group. So every child again was solving the puzzle independently, no connect with the others. And there was a third group where what the researchers did was they gave the same challenging puzzle, and they gave these children a blue t-shirt and said, you belong to the blue group, and the blue group is the puzzles group. So here, the students, the children were identifying themselves with a group, even though they did not know anybody in the group, and they were solving the puzzle separately by themselves. The research found that this third group of children actually persevered longer, and there was greater tenacity. They tried harder to solve the challenging puzzle itself. And similar studies with adults have also actually given similar results. And actually, if you think about it, even when we are in part of a group, there is some extra strength that we do feel. I mean, I have felt it, so I think a lot of you would have felt it. So there, the sense of belonging we must actually cultivate for the children in the classroom itself. And are we doing that is a point of reflection. The learner is, of course, the most important in everything we do. Children come with different socio-economic, cultural backgrounds, and because of the different backgrounds, their learning curve is different, their ability to grasp is different, and they have individual needs. And I'm sure all of you have seen that, and I'm sure all of you are also addressing it in your own way. I just wanted to bring out here that these are areas that we have to think about. What do I mean by intrinsic nature? So let me give an example from my own experience here. When I used to go to schools for school visits, this was many years ago, and this was I used to make visits to a lot of the government schools, and there the technology resources were there, but not enough for all the students in some of the schools. So very often you would see a situation where technology resources shared by a number of students, and here I would find that 1 or 2 students were always like in the forefront. They wanted to be the one to handle the technology, the laptop or the computer, and they wanted to be the one to click and handle the app. Not out of any malice, but it's just their intrinsic nature. So when you see such things, how do we balance that out? how do we make sure everybody gets the opportunity when the resources are limited sometimes, but at the same time not uh, trying to quell the maybe the leadership quality of those few students who want to be in the forefront. We should not try to quell that either. So how do we balance all of that? So we have to think through all of these things. These are all areas for our reflection. So, and of course, the relationship between everybody in the classroom, teachers, learners, that has to be healthy and has to be one of trust. That is when it builds into that safe environment that we just spoke about in the earlier slide. Then teaching strategies, I will not go into it too much because I'm sure all of you are attending so many workshops. You all are, being exposed to different pedagogies. You're trying it in the classroom. Now, the point of reflection would be when you try out new pedagogies, is the outcome really matching what you have learned in your workshops or your teacher professional development sessions? Otherwise, what is the gap? Interdisciplinary is also something we need to try and bring into our classrooms, and I think the education policy also calls that out, interdisciplinary nature of teaching itself. So, for instance, bringing in the arts and art activities into teaching. An example would be, say, a history teacher who has to teach, say, some portion of Indian history, maybe the Maurya period or Gupta period, instead of just giving the students in a regular, normal fashion all the details and all the dates and events that happened. What this teacher can do is break the students up into different groups and tell them, you research on it, find out everything that happened during that period. Of course, that is in itself project based. I'm sure it is happening, but then go one step further and say that each group should assign roles, to each of the children and actually enact that entire period out. If it is the Gupta period, Maurya period of Indian history, enact the whole thing out. So it brings in element of art and theater and creativity and fun for the students as well. I know these kind of activities will require time. So as and when, how much can you do? How much will you be able to incorporate? Those are all points of reflection, but trying to bring in interdisciplinary aspects to our teaching itself. Assessments are very important. They give us a snapshot of where the student is, and we want assessments to be fair, unbiased. Whatever biases we may have, I mean, we are all human beings. We must keep that bias out of the window when we are assessing. Feedback methodology is something that is very, very important. We have to give timely feedback and detailed feedback so that students learn from their mistakes, and it becomes an avenue for self-learning as well. So, for instance, if a student has solved a mathematics problem and the answer is wrong, and I just put a wrong there, give a 0 and give it back. Now, the child may not learn much from it. However, if I notice that going from step 2 to step 3 in that problem, the student has made a mistake, either I give detailed notes there, or better still, I ask the student, what was your thinking when you moved from step 2 to step 3? And when they are articulating, make them themselves realize what their misconception was. So these are all different ways in which we can make the feedback methodology feed into the learning for the child and self-learning for the child as well. So are we able to incorporate all these things is an area for reflection. And finally, I want to talk about policy. Policy can be at a school level, it can be at a state level, it can be at the national level. So when policy mandates come out, we need to look at the how aligned is it with the classroom reality? How aligned is it with what is actually required in the classroom? How much implementation support do we need? Facilities do we need for actually implementing those policy mandates? and training requirements. So a policy might say do X, Y, Z, but it may require a certain degree of training for us. So if we think about all of that, we can actually feed back into the loop and get the issues resolved. So these are all some of the areas that I wanted to share with you all. And now I have a short reflection activity for all of you. So in any area of reflection discussed or any other that you can think of, write down one thing you want to start doing, you want to stop doing, and you want to continue doing. I would like you to write that down for yourself in your notes, but share at least one of them in the chat box so that we can, have a sharing session and learn from that. So I'll just give you a few seconds to do that. And I will request my colleague from Center to share with me whatever the participants are typing into the chat box.
Sure. I will repeat the question that ma'am had said. Think about any one area. Think about what you want to start, what you want to stop doing, and what you want to continue doing in your professional area. We have a couple of replies. Madhumita Guha has said that philosophy as a subject might help learners to reflect more. So I guess she wants to start doing that.
Okay.
Ananya Joshi has mentioned that she wants to start making her students reflect.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yes, that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else
Same.
wants to continue
Pooja,
doing anything that you have?
yeah, Pooja Khurana also wants her students to be more reflective and wants them to be more philosophical.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, y'all can keep thinking about this. There will be some things that we usually want to stop doing after some time, some things we want to continue doing. So you can keep jotting this down and then sharing it amongst your groups as well. So now what we will do is speak about some practical steps for execution of the reflective practice itself. So conscious awareness. So now these steps that I'm going to be sharing, I have the teaching in the classroom as my background scenario, but these steps are applicable whatever the situation may be. You may have to tweak it a little bit, but it is applicable. Here, however, I have the classroom as my backdrop. So first is we have to have conscious awareness during sessions, make a mental note of nuances in the classroom, students' expressions, engagement levels. Sometimes we get so engrossed in what we are teaching, the content becomes our entire focus. So while the content is and should be our focus, we also have to have this conscious awareness during sessions. Why do we need that? Because only then, when we make a mental note of all these things, the next step becomes easier, which is journal note taking. It is very important in the reflective process that we actually write down. Remember Madame Curie? She used to write down such detailed notes. So let's take a note from her, note taking. And journal note taking will actually put down all the what that transpired. So we've had conscious awareness during the session. It is easy for us to write down all the what that actually transpired, and the emotions, the feelings that came up, the behaviors, and also you can connect it to the the stages of the Gibbs reflective cycle. The first three stages, the what happened is what we have to write down here. Now, Feeding into this journal note taking, there are other avenues. You can get feedback from students. After all, the students are the main stakeholders here. And we will get a sense, if we get feedback from students, we get a sense of how different people have felt about whatever was undertaken. And here I would suggest have very simple questionnaires so that the student's mind is not wandering here and there. It's very focused in answering those simple questionnaires. Keep the feedback anonymous. The students should know that their name is not being divulged so that they feel free. And there should be attention given to the feedback. So what do I mean by that? The students should know that we are giving respect to their feedback in the sense that we are actually reading it. We are going to try and take certain, action on it. And you can kind of exchange that with them in different ways. You could say, thank you for your feedback. I will be looking at it over the weekend. And after the weekend, actually say, yes, this was one feedback which I'm thinking about. So when you actually call out one of the points, they know that you are giving some thought and attention to it. So that builds the trust, which is, again, very, very important. Again, goes back to that safe environment that we are talking about. So make sure that you give attention to the feedback once we ask for the feedback. Then another thing that actually feeds into, can feed into your journal note taking is peer observation. Very often when we have a peer, maybe a colleague or maybe a senior, actually watch the session, whatever the session may be, we have them actually watch the session. Their insights can help us understand certain things that is that we have become blind to. So have colleagues or seniors observe certain sessions if it is of interest, if it is of some particular interest to you. And if you want certain aspects of the session to be looked at, then a pre-discussion always helps. And definitely after the observation is done, there should be either oral debriefing or written feedback, because that written feedback that you get from your colleague will then go into your journal notes, because you want to collate everything about the task itself that has transpired. And here I would also, in the peer observation, I would also say that you don't have to have a person from exactly the same domain always. Sometimes it's very helpful to have somebody from another domain completely to come and watch, who might bring a very different perspective. And especially if you want to have inputs not mainly on the curriculum or the pedagogy of that particular content in the curriculum, you are interested in the atmosphere in the classroom or the total the way the students are interacting with each other. If you want inputs and all of that, get people from other domains as well. And agreement with the person who is observing is not mandatory. You must be respectful, get all the inputs, and then think for yourself also, and then have other discussions to decide which you want to actually imbibe and which you don't want to imbibe. So agreement is not mandatory, but it is always helpful to get the feedback from others as well. And then analysis of the journal notes. Remember, there's an analysis phase in the Gibbs reflective cycle itself. So here we are trying to understand the why behind everything that happened, all the what. And you will notice patterns over all your journal notes. You may be able to notice patterns. You may be able to notice patterns across what you've heard other colleagues have actually experienced, and then see whether experience can actually inform your current practice. And through all of this, and analysis of journal notes will also involve peer discussion. So analysis can be individual, and then it should be also as a group activity. Wherever you have thought of certain things, have a brainstorming session. Just bounce it off people you trust and people whom you think will give you more advice and make it richer for you. So peer discussion also contributes towards the analysis, and the peer discussion can be formal or informal, online, physical, any of those forms you can have peer discussion that goes into the analysis itself. And then you come up with a roadblock resolution if it is some issue that you are actually trying to resolve. If it is some good practice that you have discussed with others and everybody agrees that it's a very good practice, then you want to think about how can I make it more public? How can I share it within communities? That is the path you want to take. But if it is an issue that you want to resolve, then you look at how it can be done through maybe professional development sessions, learning communities, research findings, and all those various ways. And through all of this, personal exploration is the internal part of us. So remember the onion model, which said that finally one has to also reflect into ourselves. So I would suggest that if you have some very strong beliefs, or you have value systems, or you see yourself like 5 years from now in a certain identity, or 8 years from now in a certain identity, write it down for yourself, and it can keep changing. I mean, it's not something that's static, it's something that's dynamic. You can keep adding, changing to it, but keep a note on those inner values and make sure that your actions are aligning with it, because that leads to your long-term satisfaction, long-term fulfillment. So even though we follow all these frameworks and all these steps we may follow, there will always be some challenges, right? So I want all of you to just answer this question for me. This is the last slide, and I would like you to answer what you believe are barriers to your path to reflection. So if you undertake a very serious reflective practice, what do you think will be your barriers? So you can pick any one that I have put down here, or if you pick E, which is other, you can share with us, qualifying that, because that will be a learning for everybody as well.
And we are still waiting for responses.
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of people have answered A. A couple of people have also said not enough opportunity for shared reflections and inner doubts and hesitancy, but mostly it's A, time constraints.
Mostly it is time constraints. Um, so yes, I want you all to take this with you and see what you can actually do to mitigate what you feel is the constraint, right? If it is time constraints, then you can start with simple reflective tasks. Doesn't have to be a major new pedagogy you're trying, or new responsibility you're undertaking right away, but simple small tasks can you reflect on it without having to put aside too much time, over the weekend maybe, and during the days, just weekdays, just write down for 5-10 minutes, spend that much time. Can you build that into your practice? So I would like you all, the reason I am ending with this slide is that I want all of you to also think about and discuss with other peers how you can mitigate some of these. And if it is enormous responsibilities in the institution itself, then how can you work with the management itself so that you get a little bit more time? So I want all of you all to take this forward and see how you can mitigate some of these barriers that you feel. Nobody has answered E, right? If it is E, then we would want to know if there is any.
No, currently no one has answered E.
Okay, fine. So I end with this. I think that is the end of my presentation, and happy to take questions if there are any. We may spill over a bit, but I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Dr. Deepa, for such an eye opening, strategic, and highly relevant session. I'm certain our teachers are leaving today with a fresh perspective and a clear framework on how to audit their classroom practices. cultivate a healthy reflective habit, and fuel their long term career growth. The chat was active throughout the sessions, especially when you asked about start, stop, and continue doing. We had a lot of people being active. I want to take some of the comments right now.
Mhm.
So, Innovators Educator Hub Delna commented that they want to start reflecting on their different students' cultural identities. They want to stop reflecting on considering what they can't influence, policy changes through their proposals, and continue reflecting on their teaching practices.
Wonderful. I think this is so insightful. Very, very nice. Policy, I would say, whenever there is a chance for you to be able to reflect on it, in the sense, so even when the national education policy was coming out years before that, drafts of the policy were circulated. I know because I was part of, getting feedback from a lot of people and convening, holding those kind of consultations. So whenever you do have an opportunity, keep looking for those opportunities and don't let it go. That's my only advice there. Yeah.
Mark has said that he wants to start deliberating and reflecting on their learners' academic responses and improve their delivery strategies. And Rudra has said they want to start reflecting on the assessment of strategies for slow learners.
Wow. Very good. Very good.
Okay. Uh, to the audience, thank you for joining today's session. We hope you found it genuinely helpful. We recently updated our app a bit, so please be patient with us while we walk you through the quick steps to acquire your record of participation. If you have already registered for the session, please follow these steps. Step 1, open the Center app on your device. Step 2, navigate to the progress section. Then, in the progress section, open upcoming and click on today's webinar. Then, click on submit feedback. Please note that this option will be available at 6 p.m. IST. After that, enter the 4-digit session code when prompted. Today's code is 7628. I repeat, today's code is 7628. You will also see the code on the screen right now. Last step, complete the feedback form and you will be able to download your record of participation instantly. If you have not registered for this webinar and want to register now to download your record of participation, please follow the following steps. Step 1, open the Center app on your device, then navigate to the Learn section. In the Learn section, scroll down to see upcoming CENTalks and go to today's webinar. Click on Enroll Now. Once you have registered, click on Submit Feedback. Please note that this option will only be available at 6 p.m. Enter the 4-digit session code when prompted. Today's code is 7628. You can see the code scrolling through the screen. Complete the feedback form and you will be able to download your record of participation instantly. Before we close, a quick note. If you are an educator interested in facilitating a future CENTalk session, we warmly invite you to visit centa.org/about us to explore. You can propose your own topics and key takeaways by dropping us an email at team@centa.org, and our team will be happy to help you. We truly look forward to more of these meaningful collaborations and shared learning experiences. Thank you all for your active participation in today's session. We truly appreciate your engagement. To register for more upcoming webinars, please visit the Center app. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you.